want to talk with you tonight about a really important topic, and I hope that this is a little bit, Brother Leon, like it would be when you go to revival at your church and you study the good book. We study the Bible for a really good reason when we're Christians, and we should study our Constitution for a very similar reason if we're good Americans. Why is 2016 the election of our lifetime? Now, Justice Scalia passed away this past week, and it's a heartbreak for all of us, especially those of us who have idolized him, certainly reading his opinions, and especially his dissents when he stood up for what was right, no matter what everyone else was saying. It had a huge impact on me. But I want to talk more about why he was so special and why this is such an important moment. It's greatest hits night for Judge Scalia in his honor. This one's a little small, so I'll read it. It said, now the Senate's looking for moderate judges, mainstream judges. What in the world is a moderate interpretation of the constitutional text? Halfway between what it says and what we'd like it to say. Here's another one. When the Obamacare decision came before him, this is what he wrote in the opinion when he was excoriating the other justices about the fact that they were working so hard to uphold this law contrary to what the Constitution said. He said, we need to stop calling it Obamacare, start calling it SCOTUS, which stands for Supreme Court of the United States, like POTUS, President of the United States, SCOTUS. SCOTUS here. This is another line in the Affordable Care Act opinion. Did y'all hear that when he called the majority's opinion jiggery pokery, which I love. I thought that was great. But here's my favorite one. Here's my favorite one that he wrote that I think is very instructive, not just about Supreme Court judges, but about where we're at right now. So, all right, Chase has come tonight. So, Chase, you get to be the first reader of the night. Hey, now wait a minute, I'm sorry. This, you know what decision this is? Who knows which decision Overfill is? This is your gay marriage decision. All right? This is what Justice Scalia said about it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Today's decree says that my ruler and the ruler of 320 million Americans coast to coast is a majority of the 9 lawyers on the Supreme Court. The opinion in these cases is the farthest extension in fact, and the farthest extension one can even imagine, of the court's claimed power to create liberties that the Constitution and its amendments neglect to mention. This practice of constitutional revision by an unelected committee of 9, always accompanied, as it is today, by extravagant praise of liberty, robs the people of the most important liberty they assert in the Declaration of Independence and won in the Revolution of 1776, the freedom to govern themselves.
Print that off and read it a few times in the next couple of days. That's it. That's the whole thing right there. And by the way, Chase is a former Constitution Project winner from Father Tolton Catholic in Columbia. I can't believe she's here tonight. I'm sure excited that she is. Love her to death. So there you go. There's our first big reading of the night from Justice Scalia. But I would encourage you anytime to read any of his opinions, and you'll be shocked at the sense that is found there for many important reasons that I want to talk with you about. All right. These are the ages of the current Supreme Court judges. I want you to focus in on numbers 2, 3, and 4, especially there, who are currently 82, 79, and 77. That means that by the time the next president takes office, at least 3 more, we've already lost Justice Scalia, but at least 3 more will be the average retirement age, which historically has been 78 years old. And as we just saw this week, lots more can happen besides just retirement. But that's what we're looking at just on day 1 when the new president comes in, let alone 4 years and 8 years down the line. Another important part of a Supreme Court appointment is that's not a 4-year problem, right? And that, on average, is a 16-year problem historically throughout the history of the Supreme Court. But that's back when they didn't live very long, going back to those times. It's factored into that, too. Scalia served for 27 years, thank goodness, but 27 years. And President Obama has been smart enough that, Justice Kagan, I think, was 53 when he appointed her, if I remember right. So the younger you get, the longer usually they will stay. Why is that important? How many of you have heard of the decision of Heller versus District Columbia, and then District of Columbia versus Heller and its various forms. Heller is the first decision in the history of the Supreme Court that said for the first time, after years and years of questions about this, speaking of the early days when we used to meet, and this was one of those things that was really a major debate, the Supreme Court finally determined that you have an individual right to keep and bear arms. A very important decision, not just because of that, but because that decision was a 5-4 decision. A 5-4 decision, that's because there are 9 judges, and they vote. And the opinions go with the vote, and the opinions are public. But that vote is very important. Many of those decisions are 9-0. Many are 7-2, 6-3. But the really close ones, 5-4. And so a 5-4 decision means lots of things. But one thing it means, obviously, is that one vote changes the outcome of the decision, right? So this was a 5-4 decision. The majority opinion was written by Justice Scalia. God rest his soul. Here is just a bit of the language from the dissent. The dissent said, there is no individual right to keep and bear arms. It only attaches to the militia. So 4 justices said, you have no right to have your own firearms. That's a 5-4 decision. And now let's think about what we just talked about, that we may have 4 new justices, possibly more, but very likely that we could have 4 new justices within the next 4-year term. And you start to think about what happens if we get the wrong kinds of appointments. I mean, all of these issues that we think about in this election are important, but we are so overlooking what is critical right now. And Heller is just one example. We've got First Amendment cases, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. We've got Fourth Amendment cases. We've got the president's trying to force the Sisters of the Poor to provide contraception. I mean, we've got everything happening right now that is a huge threat to what our country is about. And it all hangs in the balance of 5-4 decisions. Tonight, how do we know? When we're looking at these candidates, how do we know which one we ought to select for the presidency so that we know that we're going to get those justices on the Supreme Court that will do the right thing? And what is the right thing? The right thing, I believe, is what Justice Scalia taught us over and over again. That, and a lot of people are calling him an originalist this week. He said he was that, but what he was more than that was a textualist. And what he meant by that was, you look at the words. As a judge, you don't play around and try to decide what did everybody mean back then. What was the legislative history or intent? Lots of judges will look at. Or even worse, what's going on today in our current climate that affects what the Constitution says. And that's what most, unfortunately, that's what most judges these days believe. We've even got a president who said that his main attribute that he looked for in the appointment of a judge was empathy. He wanted judges who would be empathetic. And I'm all for empathy when it comes to a legislator or preacher or any number of people, but not a judge. A judge should look, and a Supreme Court judge should look only at the text of that original document. So how do we know then who we ought to pick? Well, here's the starting point. And you might guess that these things that I want to talk about have a bigger application than just this small question, but certainly for what this discussion is. Here's where we start. Read that for the crowd, would you?
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So, politically, in my opinion, those are the most beautiful words ever written, but much more important than their beauty is because of what they mean. I believe that this is the key that we've all forgotten, and in Washington, D.C. especially, that we have forgotten. And it's really worth our consideration. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They are endowed by whom? Our Creator God. With what kind of rights? Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are the most critical concepts ever known in the history of governments. Because up until that time, governments existed to put men in the place of servitude to the governor, or the king, usually, the dictator. That was the purpose of man. I happen to believe that a Savior came to this earth to provide a much better way for us, and so did our founders. And so they came here, and they said, for the first time in the history of this world, that your rights come from your Creator, not from the grant of a king. They come from your Creator, and they cannot be taken away from you by that king. That is all the difference in the world, and that is what we have lost complete sight of. Okay? This is not the Constitution. This is our Declaration of Independence, but this is where it begins. This is the foundation. All right? Step 2 of the foundation is right here. Pick up after those words right there. Tell us what the end of it says.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
So everybody forgets that part even when they remember the first part that we read. Do you see the magic of this? Your rights that come from your Creator, that are yours inalienably, that is the purpose of government, to secure those rights. Not to come up with some genius thing that we mortals can come up with, but to secure the rights that your Creator put in you at your birth to become what He created you to be. That's powerful. That's what makes America the greatest country there ever has been. Not because of economics or any of those silly things that we seem to talk about all the time. It's because these young people here in this country, if they choose to do that, can grow up to be exactly what they were created to be. Not told you have to go work in a mine, not told the government insists that you go do this for the rest of your life, or that you get thrown in prison the rest of your life. But that thing for which your Creator made you, just you get to be it, Lily. That's beautiful, and that's worth fighting for. That is worth fighting for. So, that's our foundation. And then, we move to the Constitution, which it took us 13 years to get to, of absolute misery, war, and trying to figure out how to even put boots on our soldiers, to figure out what that government should look like. And our preamble tells you what our government is for. And my favorite part is to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, those who come after us. We're talking about us. That's the reason, right? To secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men. So to secure these blessings of liberty, we form this government. That's the purpose. And if you understand that, then you understand everything about this country. And you understand why we've gone off the rails. And you understand exactly what it's going to take to put us back on. And it's not an individual. It's not a president. It's you. It's everybody in this country understanding that this document is the answer to every question that we have, to every problem that we have. There is absolutely nothing that we're facing right now that they did not foresee and did not provide for. So they said these are the very separate and distinct roles of government. Each branch has its own role. No branch is to overstep its bounds, and if you overstep your bounds, you're to be pulled back into line by the other branch, the corresponding branch that has been given power to pull you right back into line. That's the way it was set up. And now we've got a president that's writing laws. We've got a Congress that refuses to do anything half the time, especially when the president writes a law. A Congress who, by the way, has the power of the purse. One penny doesn't get spent unless they say yes. And we all too often have a judiciary trying to write laws. That's what Scalia was talking about. Legislating from the bench. Heard that term before. That's what he's talking about. When it comes before you, this sad story that someone's been involved in, it's the temptation of these judges, good people, to say, well, the law doesn't provide for this. The legislature didn't write a good enough law to take care of these people. I've got to step in. I've got to step in. In the case of the Supreme Court judge, that's why Scalia is using those words. 9 unelected people become the ruler of us all. And so on things like Obamacare and gay marriage and all these other issues that we all care so much about, rather than standing up, and I've said it many times, I'll say it again, somebody dying in the well of the Senate filibustering the bill if that's what it takes to stop it. Rather than that, we all sit around and pray and cross our fingers, boy, I hope those 9 elected people in the black robes will save us. And that is not the way this country was meant to run. But here we have a blueprint. Very simple, but very profound. And by the way, there's nothing in that document that says that Congress gets to say to administrative agencies, you go legislate, execute, and be a judiciary. That's exactly what we're doing. And our founders said if ever there's a situation where all 3 of these powers are vested in one entity, you've got tyranny. Well, agencies write about 10 times more laws per year than Congress ever does. It's a huge problem. Do you hear anybody talking about that this evening? I haven't. But it's not just the separation of powers, right? We've also got this system of federalism, which is supposed to say that the federal government has certain powers, but the state and the people have certain powers. And more specifically, federal government has enumerated powers, and only those powers that are enumerated, and all the rest are supposed to be left up to us. So limited government. That's what they were telling us. And Article 1, Section 8 lists those powers. Okay, quote time. Who wants to do some Jefferson? What does that say?
The government that governs best governs least.
Yep. Can you read that? Somebody close has to do this one, and you do this one.
The 2 enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first.
Have you heard that one before? Isn't that good? All right, that's a similar. Who wants to do who? Leon?
In questions of power, then let no more be heard confidence in man, but bind him down for mystery on the chains of the Constitution.
Who else? Fred?
Government big enough to give you everything you want is a government strong enough to take everything you have.
And you know, I had to throw in a Gipper. Who wants to do a Gipper? Rudy?
Man is not free unless the government is limited.
Right? The more power the government has, the less liberty we have. The more liberty we have, that means it has to necessarily mean the government has less. Has to. We also have this little thing called the 10th Amendment that we just made reference to before. And because of that, we are to be the United States of America, not just one country where we're all doing the same thing. The state of Missouri has the right to do health care if we want to. We have the right to educate our children without being told exactly how it's supposed to be from the top down. You know these things. So the answer is all in this document, right? And it includes all these things. It also includes this. The Bill of Rights, you know, was part of the great compromise that allowed the Constitution to ever be ratified, because our founders said, going back to our first foundational step, you know, these things, everybody knows that you've got the right to the freedom of speech. And so the argument was, we don't have to put that in there specifically, and we don't want to, because we don't want everybody to think that we didn't believe in it enough that we knew it already existed. But then the other side said, yeah, but if you don't, somebody's going to try to take it away, so we want it in there. So we'll ratify it if you promise we get a Bill of Rights soon. So they did. So the Bill of Rights says what? I need more readers. Mr. Prosecutor, you got to read one for us.
Congress shall make no laws respecting establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or of the press.
Doyle?
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Leanne?
No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause.
Should have left that one for the prosecution. James?
No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law.
Did anybody notice that I was emphasizing a word through all those? There is a reason for that. The The founders said, you can't take away our inalienable rights. They did not say, we are granting us good benevolent government. We're granting you the right to free speech. That's what every other country had done. Here's another one after the 10th Amendment that's often overlooked, and I do not know why. It's a great amendment. It should be used all the time. Who's going to read the 9th for me? Take a volunteer. Who? Jack! Thanks for volunteering, Jack.
The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Do you see what they're saying?
Yep.
You have these inalienable rights. We're going to say specifically what the federal government is allowed to do. Everything else is yours. That's the way it's supposed to work. Here's one of my favorite quotes, isn't it, Chase? Say this together with me on 3. 1, 2, 3.
The Constitution is the guide which I will never abandon.
You know, when I was young, I didn't fully appreciate that quote. But when you really think about the problems that we have, our founder was telling us, this is the answer. This is the answer. It's not a long document. I would encourage you, if you've read it 1,000 times, to read it again this election season. It's all in there. Article 1 says Congress writes the laws. Article 2 says the president executes the laws. Article 3 says the judiciary does not legislate, but they interpret the laws. They say what the law is, not what they wish it was, but what it is. If we do those things, if we keep our powers separate and we check one another, if Congress says, oh yeah, you want to try an executive order, guess what? No electricity in the White House. It'd be a whole different situation right now. If you seek the highest office in this land, you understand that you should be a very humble human being. You should understand that you have a role to play, and it's a small role. It's a very delineated, it's a very specific, it's a very important, but it's not a king role. And you should understand that what your role is just to fit right there within the text of what that great Constitution says that you're supposed to do. And if you do that, and you respect the other branches, and you respect our federal system, and you keep government limited, then you know that you're going to do exactly what it takes to make our nation great. But if you don't, if you think, I am a really great guy, I'm really smart, and I'm really good, I'm really a good guy, and so I know better. I know better even than the founders, but I sure know better than everybody else in this country. So I'm going to take care of it. Here's what we've got to do. And I'm going to decree it. If Congress won't go along with me, I'll issue an executive order. It's not just dangerous because of the executive order. It's dangerous because it tears apart the fabric of what makes us work. It tears apart what our blueprint is here for success. And so that I think George was saying that obviously Christian values are very important. I think he also was saying that that's the kind of man in the office of the presidency that will really understand what his role is about. You know, I'm not the greatest Christian that ever lived, but I think there's something about how you're supposed to know. That doesn't mean that you can't be forceful. You should be. But you know, there are some things that I think when we watch these debates and listen to these speeches, we ought to be paying attention to. Everything that we've got going on right now, be it international disputes, be it a fiscal crisis, which we also don't talk about enough, all of this problem with too much overreach on powers, Congress not doing enough, all these things, all of it is right there. And George Washington told us what to do. And Dan, I think the answer is that we just go back to that. It's so simple. But we ought to press for that. And I'm a big believer in that great quote that not only is it true that small groups of people can change the world, the truth of the matter is that's the only thing that ever has changed the world. But I just encourage you not only for your own vote, but to speak up and be heard about what really matters. And what really matters is that we go back to that Constitution and what the text of it says, what Justice Scalia has been yelling at us about for 27 years now. Pay attention to what the founders wrote down. Don't go beyond it. Don't stop short of it. Just do what they said, and it's all going to be fine. And so I'll leave you with this thought. We have the power to make this the greatest 40 years that we've ever had in this country. And we've had some great stretches, but we've got the power to do things that we could have never dreamed of. Did you know the pursuit of happiness, what that's really about?
Back to free old property.
Part of it. The founders went way back before the Greeks. But the Greeks were the ones that really had drilled down on the pursuit of happiness and said that the pursuit of happiness was about your purpose in life. It was about that destiny that you're to fulfill in life. That just being happy isn't running around being goofy all day, going fishing, even though that's fun, right, Doyle? We like our fishing. But that there are things for which you were created, not just for your own selfish interest, but for everyone else in this world. And that a noble pursuit of the good things in life and what you were put here for, that is real happiness. That's the pursuit of happiness. Our forefathers did it for us. They died for us to be able to have this. They at least deserve that we'll stand up in the midst of this election when it's all on the brink. We'll go back to what they told us, we're going to be fine. I just want to tell you, whether it be 40 years of Supreme Court judges who may have the chance when who knows what decision comes before them, but freedom of religion is coming real soon. Big cases on freedom of religion. Guarantee you Second Amendment's going to come back real soon. Guarantee you executive overreach is going to come back real soon. Separation of powers, all these things will come back very soon. But more importantly, if we have a president in the vein of the Gipper, who will rein back government, and put it back in its rightful place, these little ones will have what they were meant to have in this country and in this life. So be of good cheer and be of a hopeful, positive spirit. Everybody's got to do their part, and whatever part you can do, I believe it is your duty to do it. And everything is at stake, but everything is right here with an easy answer for you. So go fight the good fight. Will you do that? Let's say it one more time together. 1, 2, 3.
The Constitution is the guide